Hello and welcome to Back Row Waffle. I'm Zion and this is Gabby, and we are two friends who met on Twitch and decided to use this format to get all of our waffling out. And today we're going to be talking about RPGs, several different ones, both ones that we've played before, ones that came out recently, and ones that will come out in the future, because we have many thoughts about all of that.
Yes, we do.
Hello, Gabby.
I have many
Yes, we
things to
do.
say
Yes, we
about
do.
RPGs because they're my favourite genre of game.
Yeah, and if you've watched episode 1, which you should have done, but if you haven't, we will link it in the description of this one and probably in a card or something on YouTube up here somewhere. And you should definitely go and watch that. It is probably the most accurate intro to our friendship because we went on so many tangents. I think we lost where we were by the end of it.
It was
Or
a
not.
perfect chaotic intro into our chaotic friendship, I would say.
It was
Yeah.
extremely chaotic. So, as we said, we will link that somewhere in the description and around somewhere on screen.
Around
And you
here.
should go and have a look at that if you want to learn more about us and what makes us tick. And one of those things is RPGs. I think we've said with newer games we'll try and be a bit more vague, but we will warn you if we're going to get into like spoilery territory.
Yeah, because we do not want to spoil the enjoyment
No,
of a
because
game.
people who do that suck.
They do. So
We should just place them gently in the bin.
I guess we'll start with Dragon Age.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, because you've been playing Inquisition again recently, and I
Yes.
wanted to ask, like, what, because I've only played a bit of Inquisition. I played Dragon Age 1, and I'm currently playing through Veilguard,
Mm-hmm.
but I've not played Inquisition that much. I've
Mm.
only played the first sort of 12 hours or so. So, as someone who's played a lot of it, like you have,
I have.
I'm gently parenting here. Like, I'm just like, yeah, but you've played a lot of that game. Like a lot.
I have played a lot of all of the Dragon Age games. I think
Mm.
I've played Dragon Age Origins maybe like 30 times
Yeah.
in my life.
So I was kind of curious about like what mechanics, if any, were taken into Veilguard from that, and like the writing, the dialogue, how any of that has changed and progressed or regressed, as the case may be.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is such a I feel like I've still not decided my full opinion on Dragon Age the Veilguard. I feel like everyone was like, "What do you think?" And my answer is because I
Yeah.
did really enjoy a lot of elements of the Veilguard, but there were some things upon reflection that I was like,
Yeah.
that
Like
could have been
I'm
different.
currently playing it. I'm probably about a third of the way through, and it's really not grabbing me the way that a lot of other games have.
Yeah, and I wonder if my love of Thedas, which if you haven't played any Dragon Age games, that's the world of Dragon Age. Literally stands for the Dragon Age setting. That's how they came up with Thedas as the name for the world. My love of Thedas, I wonder if that kind of gave me rose-tinted glasses, shall we say, when
I
I
never knew that, by the way, about that. That's why it's called Thedas.
I
That's
know.
such like a cop-out, I feel like.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? Because I think the name Thedas is really cool, and I only learned it like recently, and I was like, but it works, so I'm not too mad about it.
It works because like the whole thing is, there's the Fade,
Yeah,
and the name of the world just sounds like that, and
yeah,
it's worked out quite nicely. But I never knew that was the origin of it,
yeah. The Dragon Age
origin
setting.
of it.
Yeah. So mechanics and such that carry through. I mean, they changed a lot with Dragon Age: The Veilguard. You said you've played a bit of Inquisition, so you'll probably know like that. They switched up the combat system. They made it so it's only 2 companions instead of 3. They kind of went Mass Effect with it.
I've been thinking that a lot, where it gives me very Mass Effect vibes with the gameplay of it, especially with like the weapon wheel and like the companion wheel and everything.
Yeah, because you like pause it to pick like the abilities, and you also can't control your companions anymore. So Dragon Age Origins 2 and Inquisition, you could switch to your companions and control them in combat.
Yeah, so it played out a bit more like Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, that was a thing I really liked about Dragon Age, particularly Origins. In Origins, you could go in and like program how the companions like fight. Like if health hits under 10%, drink potion. Like if mana hits under 50%, cast this spell. If surrounded by 2 or more enemies, retreat or whatever. Like, you had a lot of control. You could pause the combat and like switch. You could like switch to Morrigan and be like, right, you cast Fade Bolt on that enemy. Alistair, you shield bash that enemy, right? Like, you could control. You could kind of make it turn-based, even though it's not turn-based combat. You could make it turn-based by pausing, giving instructions, watching it play out, pausing again, kind of thing.
Yeah. It was like kind of a hybrid turn-based kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not like Baldur's Gate where it is literally turn-based.
Yeah,
but
no.
Like,
you can just play it
effect.
like the 1, 2, and 3. I'm just gonna say 1, 2, and 3. 1 is Origins, 2 is 2, 3 is Inquisition. But 1, 2, and 3, you can just like play as your character in real time using your abilities if you want to. But for those people who like the kind of nitty-gritty, especially if you play on the harder modes, you really have to pause and like micromanage
really
the battlefield kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they obviously got rid of that in the Veilguard. I wasn't too upset about it because I think what they added in the combat system, I thought the combat was really fun and quite dynamic. I played what class did you play? Are you playing?
I'm currently playing as a rogue in Veilguard.
Okay. I've started to play through as a rogue, but I haven't got far yet.
I'm like the mosquito. Where, like, my companions are like, throwing spells and hitting it with a sword, and I'm just like,
yeah.
I'm just bouncing around all over the place.
So I can't speak to the warrior or the rogue class because I haven't done a playthrough with them yet. But I played the mage, and I went for like the dagger. So I was like jumping into combat and using like a magical dagger, and then I could like flip away and like hit them with electricity and it was just like a completely new, because in all the other games as a mage you like stand at the back with your staff and you go like 1, 2, 3 bosh, you just do that until you like freeze them or whatever. So
the Elden Ring build where you just stand there and go
pretty much you
15
just
minutes straight
constantly hit them with your like general magic, and then you like use your special spells once cooldowns come down. So I did really like that, and as playing a mage, it was really fun to kind of be a frontliner mage. Like, I was getting into combat, I was like dropping these like massive circles of electricity, and like the ultimate abilities were really cool. So I did like the combat. I
feel like that's the strongest part of it for me, at least so far.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely for me veered more into the action adventure rather than, is that the right term?
I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like an action RPG rather than what I would consider an RPG. To me, an RPG is like your Mass Effect, your Baldur's Gate 3, early Dragon Age, where like Skyrim, where you have I guess with Mass Effect you don't have a unique character because you all play Shepard, but you still form Shepard into who you want them to be.
You have a template.
Yeah. But you like make decisions, like, you make dialogue decisions, they impact the real world. You can play loads of different ways. There's multiple different outcomes to certain quests. You can replay it like 4 or 5 times and have a different experience each time. Like, that to me is what an RPG is. However, what I realised with the Veilguard, so I did the whole playthrough and I did enjoy it for the most part. When I went back to replay it, I realised I don't think much is going to change, because you can't be evil. Like, you can pick like the rude option where you're a bit more abrupt or to the point.
I did find that where it's like the evil option is you're kind of just being a dick to people.
Yeah.
Rather than being actually like Mass Effect, like renegade options.
Yeah,
were renegade options.
You do some bad shit as a renegade.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, we can have a calm conversation with this hostage taker, or we can just blow their head off.
Yeah, and
whereas Dragon Age is just like, I never knew you felt like that, or why do you feel like that?
Yeah, and to some extent, I mean, people will really complain about it, but to some extent, Dragon Age Inquisition is the same. Like, most of the options, you can be rude. You're not really like evil, though you do have some big choices where like one is clearly the bad choice.
Yeah.
In Veilguard, it's that thing, right, where it's like the illusion of choice. So you're playing it like, this is going to be so impactful, but then as I'm thinking about this, and I haven't played it all the way through again and made different choices, so this is me kind of speculating, but I know other people have said it. It doesn't feel like my second playthrough is going to be that much different, even if I pick all the opposite choices.
Yeah, because I feel like eventually it will lead into the same branch.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the other Bioware game, like Mass Effect, where, Mass Effect 3, as much as I love it, we can
Yeah.
say that eventually you will reach the same kind of decision in a lot
Yeah.
of places. But
I wasn't
yeah.
too mad about the Mass Effect 3 ending, like
No,
some
I
people
actually thought
were.
it was fine. But I will admit there are so many things that you do throughout the Mass Effect franchise that in the end don't really matter, depending on
Well,
which option you
yeah.
choose.
Yeah.
Like some options can just completely undo other things.
But you can
Like,
like lose people, lose companions.
yeah, exactly.
You might
I
not
feel
have
like,
the right help. It's a bit different now when you play Mass Effect 3. When Mass Effect 3 first
yeah,
came out and they had the online, you had to grind the online to get all the galaxy on your
which
side.
was a really weird thing, and I hope they don't do that again.
It was
As
a
much as I
weird.
like the online, the co-op was actually quite fun, but don't tie
Yeah,
it into the campaign.
I wish they tied it into a single player thing. Like if you do
Yeah,
these side quests, you'll get this part of the galaxy on your side.
yeah.
So there were, and you definitely notice a difference if you like barely get galaxy. I can't remember what it's called, galaxy approval
It's
rating. To
Galaxy
if you,
Readiness, I think.
yeah, to if you fully like, there are different scenes, and but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Ultimately, there's three choices at the end of Mass Effect 3. Well, two
yeah.
choices, a secret third if you do certain things.
A secret third.
But yeah, but with Dragon Age: The Veilguard, I feel like you're gonna have the same experience pretty much, no matter what you pick.
Which is a shame.
But then they were tying up over 10 years of storytelling threads.
Yeah.
So when I think about it on a technical term, a technical kind of thought process, how different can you make it when you're trying to close up all of these threads? You
And
know?
that obviously that is kind of an issue when you have something going on for that long, especially in the gaming industry. There's
Yeah.
probably like half or maybe probably even like 80% of the team that worked on Veilguard didn't work on the other games.
Well, a lot
So
of
it
the
just makes it
writers
even,
left, didn't they?
well, exactly. And then you've got other writers trying to pick up from
Yeah.
where things were left off and trying to form their own ideas. I mean, it's a little bit like the last Star Wars trilogy where it was just like a trilogy, but the
Yeah.
end and the beginning were the same person and the middle wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which not it's not that bad. I'm just saying. It's not
Yeah,
that
no,
bad.
no, no.
There's
It's
worse things.
no, I so as a long-term Dragon Age fan that's been playing since 1, I was happy with Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I finished it. I was like, wow, that tied up everything that I've been kind of thinking about for the last
Yeah.
15 years of playing Dragon Age. You know, it ties up all the like three major kind of plot lines and themes. And then it was on reflection that I really started to think about it. So, like I said, the fact that I think your choices don't really matter in Dragon Age
Yeah.
of Veilguard. I know some people were annoyed because they don't take into account Dragon Age 1 and 2. So they like made their own canon for Dragon Age of Veilguard for the world state.
Yeah.
And some people were fuming about that. I made Alistair king. Why is he not king in it or whatever? I can't remember what the canon world is for the Veilguard. I understood that as well. Like as a Dragon Age fan, BioWare are not going to go back through 15 years of multiple choices and then form
Yeah.
like 7 different world states you can start in, especially when you
Yeah, because I
say
mean
half the team didn't even work on those original games.
it's a much bigger gap because Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 3 was 5 years.
Yeah, and it was
And that's
back to
it was
back
basically
production,
this.
wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
was basically the same team throughout.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to like, because like Mass Effect 3, there are things from Mass Effect 1 that come up there,
Yeah.
like the Rachni and the Geth
Yeah.
and various other bits and pieces. But as you said, for Dragon Age, it was like 3 times that amount of time
Mhm.
with completely different people.
Yeah.
So it is much harder. So I guess they did have to pick and choose certain parts.
Yeah. So I understood that and I kind of forgave it, you know. It's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah. It
What
is
I
what it is.
don't forgive is
The juicy part.
the writing. Okay?
Yeah.
Overall story, liked it. Tied up all the loose threads, like I said. The companions. It's so hard because there's a lot of companions. So I'm not going to say any spoilers. I'm going to be very generic here, but there's a lot of nice companion moments you have kind of in the like hub where you're like safe, you know, the safe house, the main lot, you know, the campsite that's Dragon Age Origins, that version of this game in this game. Loads of nice scenes in that you're like, this is really nice, and it feels like a situation that would happen for these characters in this situation. But then, have you lost me? You're looking.
Nope, we're
Okay.
all right. I was just scrolling down my notes. Continue.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nice moments like that, and I'm like, oh, it's really sweet that they included that. Like they mentioned, like someone's like, oh, I need to go like get ingredients for the elf character because she has a very specific Dalish diet, and it's like stuff like that. You're like, oh, that's really cool that they thought of that.
That's really nice.
But then the actual like character development is really basic.
Yeah.
And
No,
one,
I mean, even as someone who's not finished it, I can tell you it has been basic.
yeah, and one comparison I saw is so in Dragon Age Inquisition you have Dorian, and he is gay, and there's a really lovely kind of arc for him about the disapproval he faced being a gay man in Tevinter, his relationship with his father. It's done really nicely. It's done, there's a depth to it. Whoever's written his storyline either has gone through it or like, is very close to the subject to be able to write it. And it's done really beautifully. I won't talk about Dragon Age Veilguard, but let's just say there's an LGBTQ storyline for one of the characters, and it is so base level, like, here's a problem and this is it, blah blah blah. And I was just like, I feel like you could have gone deeper with it. We could have really explored this and not been so just surface level. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I mean, that has been like one of the biggest complaints that a lot of people have had is that they delve into these really intense and like important issues, but then they don't really get into it enough.
No.
And they kind of just wrap it up.
And it's not
with,
done
"This is a problem,
creatively.
and we should try and resolve this. And now this is no longer a problem."
Yeah, it's not done creatively at all. And it's a shame because the reason like Bioware and Mass Effect and Dragon Age are my favourite games is because of the depth of their writing and like the companions you get to know in the other Dragon Age games. Like, I mean, the Dragon Age setting, when you think about it, is kind of an awful setting. Like,
100%.
It's rough for most of the people who live in Phaedus. And it's really interesting to explore that trauma and like help these companions through it, and while you're saving the world as well. And that it lacked there, which is a shame.
It is one of the things that I'm most worried about with the new Mass Effect, because that's where most of my like BioWare experience is.
Yeah.
And I think back to even like Kasumi in Mass Effect 2.
Love Kasumi.
Who is like such a minor character. She's not even there if you don't have the DLC.
The DLC, yeah.
Because this was like the early days of DLC where they were just every game had DLC because every game had to have DLC.
Yeah.
Oblivion gave you horse armor, so now you get like a DLC character in Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
But Kasumi had like, I don't know what her mission that you do to recruit her is what, like an hour and a half?
Something like that, yeah. It was a really good mission.
Exactly. It genuinely has like a lot of depth, a lot of really good gameplay where you're like undercover in this like big establishment party.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
so good.
You're like heisting, things that belong to her partner.
There's a little Dragon Age ogre as well in the artifact room. Yeah.
But you're like heisting essentially all these things that belong to her partner.
Yeah,
and
her storyline
to try and recruit her.
Yeah.
And like she's narrating you through the whole mission. She's speaking to you and like she's talking about like how she met her partner, like what they did together, the things that you're actually stealing. And it's like so much development in such a short time.
Yeah.
And now I can't imagine going back to play Mass Effect 2 and not having her as part of the crew.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though she is like such a minor character, like she doesn't really have much of a part throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah.
But it's just like little things like that were so well developed and so well written, and then I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
With newer games.
And
I'm just like, that concerns me a lot.
That's another thing I like about Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Some of the characters that you can like claim in those games aren't good. Like Zaid, the DLC character. He blows up a refinery, kills a load of workers. He's a bit of an asshole, to be honest. He's not very likable.
The thing is like, as part of that, this is Mass Effect 2, by the way. Part of that is that you do it, and he's just like, hell yeah, man, we're friends for life. But then if you don't do it, I don't think he joins you if you don't do it, does he?
I don't think
he still join you, but he's like a little bit salty about it.
I think the agreement is you have to get him to join you.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, which by it we mean blowing up an entire refinery full of like innocent people,
Yeah.
just to get revenge on the guy who runs it, who has wronged Zaid in the past. If you don't do it, Zaid is just like, well, you're worthless, aren't you? And it's just like
Yeah.
hundreds of just innocent civilians, because like you're running through the refinery and everything's on fire and it's all exploding and everyone's trying to evacuate.
Yeah.
And
But that's
it's just like, this
interesting
is
to
not a good character.
have companions that kind of clash with what you think is right as the player. And like in Dragon Age Inquisition, you can recruit Vivian, and she supports the mage circles being put back. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the lore, the mage circles are basically, mages are really dangerous in the Dragon Age setting because they're vulnerable to the Fade opening, to being possessed by demons. So they have these kind of, the Chantry, which is the religion, they set up these mage towers where they live in this tower. They don't really go outside, so they can learn to practice magic safely. And they're guarded by Templars, who are like anti-magic warriors that know how to put them down.
Yeah.
They get taken over. As you can imagine, very oppressed mages are in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
And you can recruit Vivian. She's all for it. She wants the circles to be put back together. And for me, when I first played Inquisition, I was very much on the side of like, no, the mages should be free. So like, I was having these disagreements with a companion, and it was nice that like, you as this hero don't get along with everyone that's helping you save the world. Like that, that would happen.
Because like Mass Effect 2, it is where you have those certain companions that are not good.
Yeah.
But you need them for like the overarching problems
that
you're facing. Like you're like Mass Effect 2, you're like, we are fighting a ridiculously powerful enemy.
Yeah.
So maybe we need the scumbag mercenary guy who blew up an oil refinery.
Yeah. And even the tone of Mass Effect 2 where you're working for Cerberus.
Yeah.
In Mass Effect 1, it's established that Cerberus are an awful company.
Yeah, because they're basically like the very xenophobic, like pro-human collection. And the only reason you're, working for them in the second one is because they brought you back and human colonies are in danger.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to resolve. It's just like there's other stuff happening elsewhere in that universe that they just don't care about.
Yeah.
But they need you specifically to rescue like the human colonies.
Yeah.
It's so, which then leads to the begining of Mass Effect 3 where it's just like, Shepard, you're in jail now.
Yeah, you worked for Cerberus. You're and I like that. I like
because
I really like the moral questions that Bioware games raise.
Yeah. The moral greyness.
And I don't think you have that in the Veilguard. Everything's quite fluffy and nice. I mean, what's happening to the world, like the enemies that you need to defeat aren't nice, but like the companions, I've only done one playthrough, so don't come at me if someone's like, well, actually, this thing. But the companions are all very nice and fluffy and all think the same and all want the same thing and they're all quite good, So
I feel like the only moral greyness that I was talking about is in Dragon Age Veilguard is that the bit that happens at the beginning that sets everything in motion was like your fault.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the only sort of like thing you've done wrong.
Yeah.
It feels like everyone's just like, I cannot believe you did that. But then for every other facet of your personality, they're like, have you met Rook? They're amazing.
Yeah.
They're so great. They've done everything perfectly, except for this one thing.
Yeah.
But they're so great. But it's just like, there's no sort of ambiguity there. It's just,
do you mean the first? You mean the first thing you do in the game, or do you mean like the first big decision?
The very first thing where the thing goes wrong and you
and that you don't even have a choice over it. So
exactly,
you can't punish the player for something they don't have a choice over. Like
and it feels like that is the only sort of downside of your character, and then everything else, everyone just talks about how great you are.
Yeah.
Whereas in Mass Effect, you've got the different personalities or the different origins of Shepard.
Yeah.
And one of them is that you are like a war hero, but you're also like this, not quite genocidal, but you're like
a lot of explosions happen when you get shit done. So casualties.
But it's like one of his origins is that he's this massive war hero, but he also genocided like a lot of people.
Yeah, to get the job done.
To get the job done. So it's just like you're already in that area where your character has this 50-50 split between like beloved by everyone and does the right thing eventually, but in like a very
works with Shepard because they know they can get the job done. Doesn't like how they get the job done.
In the best way. Yeah, exactly.
And I like that you can go down the path of being like, I'm gonna go full renegade, and
like it adds so much depth to that character being able to be that guy who, for lack of a better term, gets shit done.
And the replayability.
But in like the worst way possible.
They have that in Dragon Age 2 as well. Like Dragon Age 2, one of the companions, he doesn't like mages, and he was like a slave to a mage in Tevinter, and there's all that. So if you're a mage, there's immediately conflict because he doesn't trust you, and then
exactly.
And then you have like mage companions, and then you have like this companion that doesn't like mages, and they clash, and it just makes it more interesting, because that's what would happen if you got a load of people together to save the world, that they would not always get along. Not everyone who wants to save the world is doing it because they're selfless and want to save the world.
I mean, it's just a very human thing in that you will meet a group of people and you need to get something done, and it can be something as mundane as just like a bit of work.
Yeah.
Like just something that you do in your job that you need a group of people to work together on, and they're never going to work together on it perfectly because that's just what people are like.
Yeah.
Like you can just be like, I have made this whole PowerPoint and John over there did nothing.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's just like the way that human life is, but somehow it's not being translated very well into stories.
Damn John.
In some cases.
Yeah.
So we are already at 30 minutes.
I know. I was like, I think RPGs, we can get like 20 minutes out of it, 30 minutes in. I told you, once you started me off on Dragon Age and Mass Effect, I wouldn't stop.
Starting this video, we were like, Gab was just like, we can do 20 minutes on Dragon Age. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. And here we are. But yes,
because I was waffling. But so my overall thoughts on Dragon Age, I'm finally going to decide after 3 months. I'm going to give it a solid, like, 7 out of 10, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that's
tied up the storylines. As a long-term fan, I needed tying up. Loved that it opened up. So another thing, just to quickly touch on, is that you play in the north of Thedas in this game. All the other games are set in the south, mainly in Ferelden. So it was really nice to visit, like, Antiva, and you go to Ravane.
I mean, it's beautiful. Like,
it's
some of the
beautiful
places that you go to in that game.
Arlathan Forest is just like, so yeah, I really liked exploring the world, especially as a fan who's heard about these places, through NPCs in past games.
I love Treviso.
Oh, yeah, so that's in Antiva.
Absolutely stunning.
That and Ravane were 2 places I really was hoping we'd visit. And yeah, because Treviso and Antiva, they're loosely based on like Venice and kind of Italy, and it's so cool. They did a really good job there, and I'm really glad that they showed us another part of Thedas, because Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age Inquisition are in Ferelden. There's a little bit of Orlais in Dragon Age Inquisition, but not much. Dragon Age 2 is in Kirkwall, and that's about it. So it was nice. I liked that they let us explore the new maps, and most of the maps were really cool to explore. The game looks beautiful. I wasn't sure if I was going to be a fan of like the cartoony, not really cartoony, but they didn't go super realistic. But it worked really well in the end, actually. I kind of liked the art style. Hated the Kunari style, though. Gotta say that now.
Yeah. Everyone has like the receding hairline in the Kunari.
Yeah, if you look at, I'll put it on screen for those of you watching on YouTube. If you look at a Kunari in Dragon Age 2, and then look at a Kunari in Dragon Age the Veilguard, what happened? Because in Dragon Age 2, they're like really gnarly, like their horns like protruding out the head, and they've got like kind of like I don't know, like the wrinkles and the they look really cool.
Like the horns are really well implemented, and then Veilguard is just like,
and then it's like smooth, like massive forehead. Yeah, I hated that. That was my only complaint about the style, was they really, and also why does everyone have a thigh gap?
Why does everyone
if
have
I
a
want,
thigh gap?
let me make a curvy character, like. Yeah, I mean, all the other games you kind of have the same body type no matter what. You just change your face.
Yeah, I mean that.
The
that
reason
was the
I'm
way RPGs were in like the
Yeah.
2000s and 2010s, it was just like, are you man or woman?
Yeah, exactly. And
That
what
was it.
hair, change your face. But like the reason
Yeah.
I'm specifically complaining for Veilguard is because they added the ability to change your body and they put sliders on, and
Yeah.
you can't have. I mean, you can go a
But not
little bit
enough.
bigger, but you can't really go curvy. I could get nice thick thighs on my woman, and not everyone has a thigh gap.
I feel like we should knock off half a point just for not having thick thighs, to
Yeah,
be honest with you.
give me a thick thigh.
God damn it.
But yeah, yeah, there's a few things I was annoyed about. Mostly the writing. As an RPG lover, I think you go into an RPG expecting it to have depth, and
Yeah.
it lacked
That's
a
the
bit of
role.
depth.
That's the R of RPG.
Yeah,
Is
and
role. You
yeah,
need that.
and I the one thing I really love about RPGs that kind of sells me on them is the companions. That's what made me love Dragon Age Origins and then set me on the
Yeah.
course of loving RPGs, was like when you could go to the camp and get to know your companions and romance them, obviously, because we all love a bit of
Obviously.
romance. So to
We
not
love
have that to the depth that the other games have had, that was
Yeah.
disappointing.
And there you have it.
And there you have it.
The verdict.
The verdict, 7 out of 10.
Right.
We'll knock down to 6.5 because you're forced
Yeah, no
to
thick
have
thighs, 6.5.
Just to note as well, nothing wrong with a thigh gap. Love a thigh gap. I just didn't want a thigh gap for my character, and I had to have one.
I just didn't want it. Just didn't want it. Absolutely not.
No
Right,
body shaming
so-
here. All bodies are beautiful.
We are going to just chat a little bit about Baldur's Gate 3, which came... What was that?
I
mean,
don't know if
a
I
little
can
bit
chat
as
a
much-
little bit about Baldur's Gate 3,
do
but I'll
we need to skip over Baldur's
give
Gate
it a
3?
good shot.
I feel like we should just do a brief overview of comparison to Dragon Age Veilguard, because Baldur's Gate 3 was 2023.
I mean, Baldur's
Yes.
Gate 3 changed RPGs as we know it, I think.
I think, yeah, and what I've got in my notes is community involvement, what they did right, and the modding scene. Because Larian are very open about wanting players to mod Baldur's Gate and wanting to make changes that the community want and adding things. I mean, they did, was it 5 major patches which added...
They just keep giving us free shit.
They just keep giving us
You
free
can
shit.
charge us, like you're giving us so much.
I feel this way with some games where they're just like, have 15 free updates, and I'm like, take my damn money.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and I
Baldur's
respect
Gate,
it as well. They're constantly
respect it.
improving it for free.
I mean, I feel that way with, that's a whole other thing, but about No Man's Sky as well, where they were like, yeah, we botched the beginning. However, we have now done, I think they're up to 20 or 20 something major patches for No Man's Sky. And I played it recently, and it's completely different. It's not the game it was when it came out.
I really wanted to play it when it came out, and I didn't because it got bad reviews, but I do own it. I need to try it. But I think that's the beauty of gaming in the state it is now, is that devs can easily patch, fix, add stuff.
And it's like that with, I don't know why I went to No Man's Sky as an example when Cyberpunk is right there. But Cyberpunk was notoriously the worst launch of any game.
Yeah.
Apart from Concord, lol. But but to the point where they removed Cyberpunk from the PlayStation. That it was that bad. Where they legitimately just said you cannot buy this game anymore because it is that broken.
Yeah.
And now
it's amazing.
It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's incredible. And it just started so poorly, but now it's almost perfect. Yeah. At least for me. Yeah. And that's kind of what they were doing with Baldur's Gate, where completely different situation in that it was almost perfect when it came out.
I bought Baldur's Gate day one of releasing.
You got early access Gale with his weird beard.
So as soon as it became available for early access, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2020
I think it was late 2021 maybe.
Yeah, so
I remember you talking about it early on in our friendship.
Yeah, me and my friend Matt, who we both loved Larian Studios' Divinity Original Sin 2. So when we saw Baldur's Gate 3 was coming, immediately paid. I think I paid 50 quid for Baldur's Gate 3 day one of early access. You could only play in Act 1. Half the scenes, when you go into a cutscene, it would have the picture of a mind flayer and it would say under construction, and it would just be the dialogue. That's how early it was. And everyone was like, why have you done that? Why have you spent 50 quid? Like, it might end up shit. And I was like, no, I just know that this game is going
This
to be
might
incredible.
be the most right that Gabby has ever
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I was right. Thank you
been.
very much. But
Absolutely right.
my point is, I spent 50 quid when it was just like Act 1, none of, like, barely any of the cutscenes were made. And I think about how much value I have for that money now. Like, obviously, they've released the full game, great. But since they released the full game and I've gone back to do another playthrough, they've added new scenes, they've changed scenes, they've added new dialogue options, they've added new features. They're about to drop, or maybe they just have dropped, like, a load of new subclasses.
I think that's soon.
Yeah, and they're adding photo mode. They added, like, camp, and they're just adding so much stuff to make it even better. And I'm like, this is insane.
We got about halfway through our playthrough of Baldur's Gate, and then they added new endings. Like, while we were playing.
Yes, they added more evil endings.
Evil endings, which is exactly what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think we saw one of the new endings when we finished it. We won't say which one, but it was incredible.
It was incredible.
It was extremely.
I think that because there was always an evil end. Well, that's the one thing I will say. When I completed, so when Baldur's Gate 3 officially released and you could play Act 2 and 3, I blitzed it in like 5 days.
Yeah, you did.
The ending.
I didn't hear from Gabby.
I won't talk about the ending. Like, I'll try not to do any spoilers, but like the ending was very disappointing after you spend 100 hours like on this campaign with these companions. And I was like, oh man, like they really dropped the ball on the last, like after you've saved the world, done, the thing, and then you're like, okay, like what happens next? Like, give me a rundown. And it was very like, okay, you did it. The companions will do this now at the end. And you're like, sorry? And then when they added they were like, okay, we hear you, we're gonna change it, and they like immediately added a better ending, like maybe like a month later.
Very rapidly.
And then so I think they added an evil ending then, but it was just one, or like people thought it was lackluster. So then when we were playing, I said to you, we need to slow down. We don't want to finish it before they add these new evil endings.
We want to see the new evil endings.
Yeah. Worth.
And boy, did we.
Worth.
But I love that is, in my opinion, the way that game developers should be run, where like the community, especially Baldur's Gate, which is such like a long-running franchise, when the community say like, I didn't like this, or like this ending was lackluster, for them to turn around, go back to their desks and be like, all right, how about this? And then they do this whole massive patch and everyone goes, yeah, I like that.
And I don't think they should
kept doing it.
Yeah, they keep doing it. And I think we're very important. We're not saying like devs should succumb to the whims of community for everything, because they'd never stop working on a game. But these like big things. I mean, it's just, Larian are just incredible. And I really think they've changed what players expect from an RPG now. I mean, I remember when it came out, and like big RPG companies were like, don't expect this to be the norm. And why? Yeah. If Larian can do it, why can't you? You've got more years of experience. You've been making RPGs for all these years.
Larian is not a big studio.
No.
If you compare it to, places like EA and Bioware and
Bethesda.
I mean, and CD Projekt. I suppose CD Projekt Red probably not to the same extent, because CD Projekt Red is like, it's not like a behemoth kind of studio, not a massive one, but it does kind of relate back to Dragon Age, where people did compare it to Baldur's Gate 3 and they were just like, this game is fine, but why isn't it up to this standard? And that's kind of like Baldur's Gate has kind of come out, and now the rest of the industry are like,
oh shit
we now have to try and live up to these expectations.
And I went into Dragon Age. So when I went into Dragon Age Veilguard, I didn't expect Baldur's Gate 3, but I think that's because I already knew the franchise. Already was familiar with Bioware games, so I expected a Bioware game, not a Baldur's Gate 3. But for the people who kind of were introduced to RPGs from Baldur's Gate 3, they've been spoiled.
They have.
They really have. I'll say to people, try Dragon Age Origins, but Dragon Age Origins was made in 2009, and I know it's a great RPG, but if I had played Baldur's Gate 3 first and then went to Dragon Age Origins, I'd be struggling with them long fingies. The weird long hands they have.
I mean, I kind of feel like that myself, because like I've been gaming since I was like 5. But even I still look at RPGs now and think, why isn't this Baldur's Gate 3? Because like RPGs aren't my sort of most played kind of genre. So
Yeah.
I only play maybe like 1 or 2 RPGs a year, new
Yeah.
ones. And even then I'm looking at them, and now I look at them and I think, why aren't you Cyberpunk or why aren't you Baldur's Gate?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at now. Even after playing so many games, I'm still just like blown away by the level of detail and like the quality in there.
And the
I'm just
amount
like,
of, I can't remember what how many voice lines were recorded. I can't remember
it's
what it was.
for Baldur's Gate, it's probably 5 or 6 digits.
Yeah,
surely.
I can't remember the number now. We'll put it on screen. But
We'll put it
yeah,
on screen.
the number
I
of
want to take a
dialogue
wild
lines.
guess and say it's over like 200,000.
Shall I Google it real quick?
Google it. Google it. Because I think it is. I mean, it's an insane amount, and the fact that they're still adding to it, like all the patches that have come out since the game released.
What did you say? 200,000.
I said 200,000.
2 million.
Jesus Christ. Okay, I was a little bit off.
That was a quick. That was a quick Google. So don't hold me to it. But it's
I was only off
apparently
by 1 digit.
2 million lines of dialogue. Also, if you put all the like cutscenes back to back, it's like longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, I mean, well done, Larian. That's all I'll say.
That is ridiculous. It kind of just because my most played genre is probably just like action adventure. I would say, and I talked a bit about the Yakuza franchise in the first episode. That is the kind of game where it's just like the gameplay is secondary.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to have 8 hours of cutscenes and you're going to sit there and like it. And
Yeah.
I do every single time. But it just reminded me of a video I saw the other day where it's literally just someone playing Yakuza and it's just like the end of a 30-minute cutscene and it's just someone sat there with just like a bag of crisps, just eating, and then it like switches to gameplay and their character is just getting punched in the face.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like scrambling for the controller.
I love when games do that though, when they like seamlessly go from a cutscene into gameplay, and you're like, "Oh, right, I'm supposed to be playing now." Like you just
and main
have no
menus.
idea.
Oh, I love when a main menu goes straight into the game.
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok did that really well. When you start a new game, it's just Kratos sitting in a cave, and then when you press start, he like stands up and walks out of it, and it goes straight into
it's just
the gameplay.
So creative. Love it.
Delicious.
It's
Absolutely
like the going back to Mass Effect 2 because I can't help myself. Mass Effect 2 when you hit start new and then it goes into like Shepard being rebuilt and then you decide what they look like and you like see like you see their body coming back to life. Like
and that's like that's the detail that we need. We're desperate.
We're desperate.
Desperate. Right. Where should we? Oh my goodness me.
We should probably end here.
We should probably. I think we're going to need to do an episode 2 on RPGs.
Yeah.
Because we were going to talk about Mass Effect 4 and where they're going to go with that, and The Witcher 4, and Cyberpunk 2, and we also mentioned Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Yeah.
And I feel like the only advantage we've got here is that we can do a bit more research on Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Before we go back in and talk more about RPGs at some point in the future.
For sure. But hopefully you liked our waffle on RPGs. Zion, do you have a
Do I need a hypothetical?
Have you got a hypothetical to end?
I was kind of thinking about dogs wearing trousers. Like, where do you stand on that?
Where do I stand?
Like, where do you stand? Do you think they would wear like? Do you think the belt would go like around their whole body and the legs would be all 4 legs, or do you think the belt would be like around their stomach and it would just be like back legs and the tail sticking out?
In my head, when you said dogs wearing trousers, I imagined that the trouser ended like mid belly.
So it's just like back legs and crotch.
Yeah. Because that's that's what a trouser's for, to cover your legs and your crotch,
I feel like
right?
If a dog is standing on 2 legs, it should be wearing a t-shirt and jeans, right? Like it's because this. Oh,
well,
that's t-shirt territory, right?
We're on. Kind of. The thing is, for animal wise, we all know I love my animals. You shouldn't dress up animals for entertainment when it comes to zoos and circuses.
No, you
and
should
stuff,
not do
right?
that.
Putting your dog in a little funny outfit on Halloween, okay.
Yeah.
If we're talking about like dogs decide to dress themselves.
Yeah, dogs decide I am tired of my bits hanging out. I'm gonna wear trousers.
And they're gonna like stand up on 2 legs. They definitely have to have a top too.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're on the same page there. I think like belt around the stomach, trousers on the back legs,
It has to
t-shirt
be
or a
around the
nice
stomach.
jacket.
A nice high-waisted jean, tuck a nice t-shirt in there.
I don't
But
really
then
know
there's
where
some
the
dogs
waist of
going
a
to be
dog is,
slobs, like they're going to wear like trackies, and are they going to like have their boxers hanging out? You know, like are we having like different fashions?
Or
And what
are
about
they
dogs that
gonna...
want to wear dresses?
Yeah, or like you've got like the slacker dogs who work from home and they're wearing like onesies.
Just PJ bottoms.
Yeah, just pajama bottoms.
Onesies, yeah.
I mean, I've seen it, you know, and some people like their dog has surgery and they don't want to wear a cone, so they just like put a onesie on it.
Yeah.
The
Doesn't
slob dog.
Doesn't the dogs in the Cats and Dogs movies wear clothes? I know they have the little headsets, don't they?
Pretty sure they do.
I know there's a one dog that's like got a little radio headset. Like,
Yeah,
all right, come on in.
You know, like BoJack Horseman. He's
Yeah.
he's a horse, but he's wearing clothes.
Yeah. So when
Alright, well,
dogs
I'm glad
gain sentience and decide to dress themselves,
I think that's where they're going to be. They're going to be trousers around the stomach.
will they have a hole for their tail?
I think they should. I feel like it'd be quite uncomfortable if your tail is
Or
shoved.
do they just have
into
to force the tail down the trouser leg?
No, you got to let it be free. I feel like the tail isn't, you know, explicitly explicit.
It's not.
I feel like we can see the tail. You don't need to cover that up.
Yeah.
I mean, humans had tails way back when. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But, you know, the rest of it, like, yeah, just cut a little hole for the tail, stick some nice, like, Levi's on it, and maybe, I don't know. Do they need shoes as well? I don't think they need shoes.
I sometimes think this. When I'm walking, I have a pug, and when I'm walking Grunt, that's his name, from Mass Effect 2, for those of you that know the character. When I'm walking Grunt and it's cold, I think, oh, his little toe beans must be so cold on the floor.
I think that with birds. You know, when you see a bird standing in snow and you're like, isn't that horrible?
Isn't that cold?
Do they just not care? Do they not have, like, nerves in their feet? I don't know.
They must
But
just...
I mean, Grunt might really rock a pair of Timberlands. I don't know. Or just, like, I don't know, some pug Uggs? Some pug
Uggs. I think he'd look at me with just disgust if I tried to put shoes on his feet.
Yeah, I think...
he's getting to old man territory now where he's like, don't. Just let me. Let me just lay here.
Don't. Well, there we go. But I'm
there
glad
we go.
we solved that.
I really like that we're going to end every episode really weird.
I'm going to have to think of some more weird questions, but that was what came to mind today.
Yeah, get planning for episode 3, because we're going to need another one. And if you have any hypotheticals, drop them in the comments for us, and we'll bring them up in the next episodes too.
This is our nice wrap-up.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in and listening to me basically just talk at Zion for 45 minutes.
I mean, that's what I wanted, to be honest. Like, I bring up Dragon Age, I know I'm going to get my ears
I've got her now. I can just chill, just let her go, and say, you got to stop now.
I very little that episode. It was great.
Well,
thank you very much for watching.
We've been Gabby and Zion. You've been awesome. Hit subscribe.
Editor, don't cut that out.
Hit subscribe, comment, like, whatever the button is on whatever platform you're listening on. Push it. Unless it's the dislike button, and then don't push that.
Why is the share button like 3 little dots connected by lines? Where did that start? Why is it that?